And I'll go to you because that's the only way. There we go.
Okay, here we are. We are almost live. We are now live, Anna. We did it.
Excellent.
My friend last week was like, it was so funny. The first 4 minutes of your live was you figuring out the technology. He's so funny. He's a jokester. I was like, yeah, did you enjoy it? I hope you enjoyed it.
That is so funny. Yes. And I will confirm that we are live because I can see that.
Thank you. I'm sitting on the floor today because I have a PEMF mat. So it's like it gives off electro frequencies.
I want one.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's hard to leave it. Like I fall asleep on it every time. So if I fall asleep mid sentence, need it today.
Oh.
We're going through so much, I think, astrologically. So many people are feeling so much, with that huge moon shift on Saturday. And I mean, all sorts of things. What are you feeling?
Yeah, no, there's a lot. And February is just a really full month. It's just a very, I think I keep saying like just kind of get ready. There's just a lot of energy and there's a lot of big shifts. I mean, we started with Pluto moving into Aquarius, which in and of itself is such a big one. And then Chiron lining up with the North Node. This is really big. And
What
actually,
happens with Chiron? What happens with Chiron when it meets the North Node?
well, it's like, and this is the collective Chiron and the collective North Node, obviously, but it's funny, like generationally, like I have Chiron in Aries, and so Chiron is in Aries. And because that's sort of like my generation or what have you, I know a lot of people who also have Chiron in Aries. And when it lines up with the North Node, it's really bringing, because the North Node is that collective destiny, but it's the challenge it's like the challenge. It's like, what are we leaving behind karmically? What do we need to leave behind karmically? But then also bring forward from Libra, because that's where the South Node is. And then with Chiron there, it's like Chiron is there to be like, what needs to be healed in this process? And specifically, that has to do with Aries types of energies, like your really sense of self, but also the selfishness versus the inspiring pioneer that is the elevated energy of like a sovereign whole being, as opposed to I'm just going to do this to like do it. And then that South Node energy, which could be sacrificing the true self to people please, or to kind of like I even see like some of the lower energies of Libra could be like dishonesty, like literally being dishonest just to kind of like feel like things are good, things are balanced and peaceful. But sometimes that Libran energy can be a bit superficial, so it can, but it's also about collaboration and harmony. So like you're bringing some of that harmonious collaboration, like how do you collaborate with a strong sense of self, that real authentic
That's what we're working through right now, is that creating that strong sense of self in this field.
Yeah, and I think in conjunction with that Aries, the Chiron, which is like, it may be some ego deaths. Like Chiron in Aries is like what, because Aries can have to do with the ego. So like what needs to be healed? Well, there may be some ego deaths. You may be, depending, obviously for everyone it's different, but where it's showing up, how it's showing up. But like, are there things that are showing up that are like where you get to look at yourself and be like, oh, was my identity wrapped up in this, or was I looking for maybe external approval, or just, I don't know, like, where is my real sense of self?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean by that ego death. I feel like there's been a lot of that this year that been working through. It's like an acceleration process, I feel. And I feel like from January to now, it's full steam ahead. Like just feeling that acceleration. So let's jump in. So yeah, we had a little side astrology conversation about what's happening currently. And so welcome, welcome, welcome. This is astrology and your communication style. So I'm here with Anna Poirier and I'm Danielle Demchak, and we're going to look at what your stars speak. Your stars speak volumes about your communication style. And we're going to we're going to decode the astrological language. If I could speak today, that would be even better.
It's the map.
Yeah, I'm going to fall asleep soon. We're going to navigate the cosmic map of communication and discover how to harmonize different styles. We're also going to discover 3 communication hacks that turn any conversation towards connection versus disconnection. So I'd love to have Anna introduce herself, and then I'll jump in.
Yeah, well, I'm really happy to be here. And yeah, especially around this time, as we were just talking about, so much to kind of absorb and evolve and grow through. And I'm a sacred space holder, guiding spiritually curious creatives and couples to embody radiance, soulful sovereignty, and to rise to their full potential through the avenues of astrology, energy medicine, and ritual.
Thank you. So good to have you here.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled to be here with Anna as well. And as I said, I'm Danielle, and I'm a certified relationship and couples coach. I'm dedicated to helping couples transform conflict into connection while guiding couples to navigate challenges and cultivate profound love. Let's rewrite your love story and build a better future filled with understanding, respect, and unwavering connection. If you have any questions as we go along, feel free to jot them in the comments. And we'd love to start out to kind of hear where you're from. Just go ahead and jot it in the comments. We've been getting people from all over, so we'd love to hear where you're from. So we're going to jump right in. Anna's going to start with the astrology of communication.
Yes. So I want to and this has to do with the actual sort of communication focus that we're doing today, but I felt like it was an appropriate quote to share that relates to just astrology in general and how I view it, or how I see it as a really a purposeful and supportive tool in so many ways. But this is a quote from Carl Jung, who actually used some astrology in his work. But and the quote is, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate." And so really what we're doing with astrology is we're looking at, and it's a lens, and we're looking at things through the lens of your astrology, your birth chart. And as you do that, it's like any other way of learning more, discovering more about yourself. The more that you bring the unconscious, because often we get a view into some of the energies that might be a little bit more unconscious, that we're not thinking about all the time. And we're bringing those into consciousness, and just in that, being able to empower ourselves, but also empower our relationships. So that's why I wanted to bring that forward. It's like bringing the unconscious conscious. And anytime you do that in the dynamic of a relationship in particular, but that first starts with yourself, there's enormous, benefits, I guess I could say, to doing that. And when we talk about communication from the astrological lens, we're mostly going to be looking at the planet Mercury. And Mercury really relates to, I'll speak a little bit more about what it relates to, but like if I'm just going to say one word, it relates to the mind. So if we can bring into consciousness more of what how our minds tend to work, from this astrological standpoint, it can sometimes give a little bit more, I hate to use the word control, but the opportunity to kind of navigate how that's affecting things in your life and how it's affecting your communication and all these things. Now, so Mercury is how your mind works. And it's what's considered to be a personal planet. And actually, let's see, we talked about the moon last time. We're not really going to be diving into your sun sign because I feel like there's so many other things that we have to talk about here. Not that it's not important, but a lot of people know what it is and, all that good stuff. But the sun would be considered a personal planet as well. The moon, although it's a moon, technically, is within that realm. But then we have Mercury, Mars, Venus, and these are your personal planets. So Mercury is one of those personal planets, which means that it's more personal as opposed to some of the outer planets, which affect more of like a global energy inside of you. So this is those personal parts of you. I just felt like it was important to share that. But
yeah, no, that's interesting. I didn't know about Mercury being more of the personal parts of you.
It's in that personal realm because it's how your mind works. It's how you process, receive, and convey information. It's the nature of your mind and the nature of your thoughts. And in that way, it's how you manifest, how you bring things into being. And I had shared with Danielle that I have a mentor who would say words are spells. And then I really even want to take it a step further, that your words, sorry, I think felt like I had a hair, your words and your thoughts. So not just your words, but the words that you have internally, the dialogue you have internally, the dialogue you have externally, they literally create. They create a certain energy. They create a certain field. They are, they're going to convey not just what's spoken, not just the actual word, but this is where bringing the unconscious to consciousness. Like once we start to watch, and this is where it's just helpful, like once you start to understand your Mercury and then even your partner's Mercury, it's like, how is their languaging, but also the tone of their voice. And are they real, like just straightforward, concise, or are they going to be a little bit more poetic, and you as well. And then it could be that the inner dialogue could run a little more anxious for some people. And this, I feel,
I run a little bit more anxious.
Yeah. Do you know what your Mercury is? Well, I have to run your chart, so
well, we're doing that in the last call for now.
Exactly.
Of this series.
Yeah. So I don't know what your Mercury is yet.
Find out. We'll
find out.
Yeah. Do you know what yours? What is yours, Anna?
Mine's Aquarius, and yeah, and so it's an air, so it's in an air sign. So I can be more heady in that way, like because if you have your Mercury in an air sign, that's already air is already about the mind, so there can be a mentalness that comes in there for sure. as opposed to an earth sign. Earth signs typically are going to be a little more grounded, practical, tangible. It kind of depends, like Taurus, who's an earth sign, but Taurus is ruled by Venus. So Taurus can have some of those Venusian qualities, like a really nice voice, right? Like a really like, if you have Mercury in Taurus, you might have a nice voice. You might even sing, or like singing. Although I like to sing and I don't have Mercury in Taurus, but those are just, and then a water sign could almost be better at conveying like the feeling tone, intuiting, being able, but not super practical, may not have like a real practical, like Virgo would be very sort of just here are the details, but Virgo mind could also run more anxious because Virgo, the sign, is ruled by Mercury already and tends towards that possibility of worrying and, mental spinning. So anyway, I really want to underscore this: words and thoughts create. Because when we start to talk about how are we engaging with another, and not just verbally, but inside our own minds too, it's like, what are you wanting to create? Because once we have a grasp on language, like meaning that we're speaking in our native tongue, there's a lot of unconscious patterns that develop inside of how you may talk to somebody, how you talk to yourself.
Absolutely.
And, just speaking personally, I really pay attention to the best degree that it's just a practice for me. My intention is to pay attention to how what do I say? What are the words I use? And like, I don't swear a lot. I do swear every now and again, but it's like, I don't swear a lot because I'm like, why do I really, is there that punch that I need to give this? Or is it just like a word that's coming out? So anyway,
I love it.
And this is your verbal expression. Mercury also deals with kind of what are considered everyday matters. So how you engage with your environment, and even how you engage with electronics, because there's an electronic aspect to mercurial energy, which I'm going to talk about, not quite yet, which is why, if some of you know about Mercury retrograde, when Mercury goes retrograde, it's like everyone's like, oh, my technology did it. Well, it's because Mercury has this influence over technology. So it can deal with the way that we engage with it. And it also deals with, I've said this already, communications, but it's like communications of all kinds, short distance travel, and even people in your life who are kind of like in your nearby environment, which would include your siblings. So it's not like your parents, not that, but your siblings, your neighbors, your peers, I would say even your coworkers. These are kind of that mercurial energy. Like, how are we relating and engaging on an everyday basis with these people, and with these situations? Also, how you make decisions. And this is an important one when we're talking about relationship, because and I'm going to make a little segue here. I'm not necessarily trained in this, but there's something. Oh, now I'm blanking out. What is it? I'm blanking out on the system now. Oh no.
It's okay.
Whatever, the body graph. I'll think of it in a second. But I find that that system, and I'll think of it, it's a meta system that includes astrology, that they talk a lot about this decision making and how you make decisions. And I found it really helpful for myself. And I'll think of it and then I'll tell you. Blanking out. There's my little Mercury blip. It's also going to be about how you communicate with the divine. The symbol for Mercury is the Venus symbol, which is the symbol for the feminine. So it's the circle with the little X below it. That's Venus. But then it has a little antenna on top of it, like a little U-shaped antenna. To me, this is like I'm tuning in to the cosmos. Little antenna tuning in. So this is really your communication with the divine and the cosmos, and however you want to look at it. However, the question is, are you really tuning in? Or are you just kind of like, I don't know, you know, are you accessing that antenna from a real divine embodiment of receiving, which is that feminine symbol, right? Like more of the receiving. It's going to have to do with your thoughts, your speech, your areas of study, things that might interest you. And it's kind of like your internal operating system, where knowing your Mercury, understanding your Mercury, it can help you upgrade your operating system by becoming more conscious of how you understand and perceive the stimuli of the world around you. And again, so that's bringing the unconscious into consciousness. Before I get into a little bit more of like, you know, the sort of the couples or relational dynamics of it, I just want to say something about Mercury retrograde, which is, I feel it's important to mention here. A lot of times people are like, you know, sort of has this this reputation, maybe, like, especially, you know, or like online memes and stuff like that, that, oh, it's something to be feared, maybe not feared, maybe that's an extreme word, but like, oh no, here it comes. Oh God. All right, Mercury retrograde. But the thing about Mercury retrograde is it's a slowing down. Our minds are moving. I mean, yes, we all have a different speed at which our minds operate, you know, according to our astrology, but mentally there's so much energy out there. Mercury retrograde, all it's saying is slow down, pay attention, review, go back, review. Don't just move forward. It's really like a rest. It's like a mental rest where you get even more conscious. You take a moment, you look, you go back, you review. You may need to do, depending on where that Mercury retrograde is happening for you, you may need to do like some housekeeping, mental housekeeping of upgrading your operating system, upgrading the nature of your thoughts, upgrading what your mindset is like. So,
and what happens with Mercury retrograde with communication, since that Mercury is our mode of communication, say, what happens to that? Because I do know, like, on a general level, communication breaks down often during Mercury retrograde, right? So what other things, when we are in Mercury retrograde, how does that affect, besides just having breakdowns, like, in the communication?
Yeah, like I said, it is a time to pause. So I think what ends up happening is that, you know, the Western society wants everything to keep going forward as it always goes. Right? Like we see that seasonally. I practice Ayurveda. It's like we think that in the winter it should be the same as in the summer, that we're always on the same energetic thread. I see that as similar to the Mercury phase. Like Mercury's a lot of energy. It's a lot of energy. It needs to take a break.
And it needs to go retrograde.
And it needs to go retrograde in order to get, and so I think it's when you try to pretend that there's not a cycle, just like, and this is really key in Ayurveda. You cannot expect yourself energetically to be the same human in the winter as in the summer. Even if you live somewhere, like we don't have a real extreme winter, we still have winter here. It's different. It's seasonal. I can feel it. And so you kind of have to honor that.
Yeah,
What's
sorry.
that?
I just want to say Anna's in Northern California, so that's what she's
Mhm.
saying, that the winter is very mild.
Right. It's milder than say where I grew up on the East Coast, but I mean, I totally feel it. I'm turning my heater on in the morning and whatever. So,
It is colder mornings there in California in the evening. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really about honoring this cycle. Now, the other thing I just wanted to mention is for some people who might have like, if you're a sun sign, I would say if your sun, moon, or Mercury is ruled by Mercury, meaning that it's in Virgo or why am I blank or Gemini, for sure. So if you have a Gemini sun, moon, or Mercury, if you have a Virgo sun, moon, or Mercury, you need to take those breaks seriously. When Mercury retrograde comes around, this is like your self-care. This is your time to go, I gotta unplug, under schedule, what's happening up here. And that and this is only going to facilitate, your relationships enormously, because otherwise that's where some of the moodiness or the frazzledness or the spinning out, anxiety.
Yeah.
Going to be able to manage some of these things. I'm going to underscore that. I think everyone needs to just kind of pay attention, and definitely like you can see where it's affecting you. And this is part of what I do. What part of your life, what area of your life, yada, yada, So it's always going to be different. Each Mercury retrograde is going to be different. But so then let's look at when we have two minds coming together, two Mercuries coming together.
Mercury minds together.
Right. Two little antenna goddesses. I know I'm not trying to be like, it's not gender specific, but whatever. It's two little Mercury beings. Okay, two little mercurial antenna beings coming together. And there's something that I look at inside of this that I call the harmony of opposites. So it's very possible that you and your partner, whoever you're engaging with, maybe you have the same Mercury. Maybe you both have, or it's in the same element. Again, the elements are air, water, fire, and earth. There's three signs for each element. So
what's the most compatible?
So yep, the most compatible in any, doesn't matter what placement we're talking about, is going to be opposites, which is fire and air, or earth and water. So those are considered, and those are the opposites. Those are opposites. And so there's the harmony of opposites. There's also opposite signs, which yes, are still going to be, but they're opposite each other on the wheel. So like Pisces and Virgo, those are opposites on the wheel. And they're also earth and water. But you can also have that elemental opposition with like Pisces and Capricorn, which are not opposite each other on the wheel, but they're still opposite elements.
Yeah.
Also, if if you have similar elements like air and air, water and water, you know,
That's more
Cap-
compatible.
Capricorn and Capricorn, those are gonna have, yes, compatible, but almost like there can be a stuckness sometimes with the energy because it's the same.
Mm,
Although it's never going to be totally exactly the same because you have a different house placement, you have, there's all the nuances of that. But I just wanted to take a little look at the harmony of opposites because when you have this situation, especially inside of communication, this is where you get your little antenna up and you can bring out the higher energies in each other.
ooh,
Now, what if you're not opposites? You're not opposite elements. You're not opposite on the wheel of the astrological wheel. Is it all lost? No. You then take personal responsibility to go, what is opposite me? What is my mercurial opposite? And how can I investigate some of those energies in order to bring out the higher energies inside of my own mind and inside of how I communicate?
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's actually like getting, when I start talking a little bit more about communication from the relational standpoint, it is being able to start to get into the other person's world view. And in this one, you're getting in their astrological view and what influences and how
Mhm.
do we best show up? How do we best show up as the higher frequencies and our
Yeah,
best? So from a relational standpoint, how do we show up as our best selves? And an astrological standpoint, it sounds like how can we access the highest version those of those frequencies?
exactly, exactly. Um, and I really, I feel like, and this is where again, you can look at your languaging, you can, just sort of um see how all of this organizes itself and like what are you and I mean this relates to astrology for sure because you start to understand how you're uh, let me think of an example here. um it may be that there is a couple situation and one person, their Mercury is, let's use the example of one person's Mercury is in Capricorn. I said this earlier. One is in Pisces. Capricorn's going to have sort of an authority to how they might convey, very practical, um, uh, have maybe like a structure, and also have a certain concern for like their integrity and their how other people view them, how sort of like their public persona, so to say. And there's also a really strong ambition and drive, um, even a control that could come through. Now, Pisces is like feeling into the nuances. They're speaking from a more sort of dreamy, perhaps poetic, the feeling to, they might be feeling into things. There might even be a forgetfulness, kind of like a dreamy quality. Um, and something else that I think comes forward too is like maybe something that's not even rooted in reality, right? Like their thoughts might actually take some of this on where there's like illusions or just dreaming up things and it's like but feeling them maybe because they feel and sense them. Now when Capricorn maybe like saying something and Pisces is like I need to understand like what's the feeling behind it, whatever. And then Pisces maybe conveying something and Capricorn's like give me the practical like structure of this, the layout. And 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 it's so these are opposite elements. They're not opposites on the wheel, But it's like inside of that, you can be like, oh, okay, well, as my Mercury's in Pisces, I can tune into, I have the ability from a communication standpoint to tune into energies that are not tangible, that are not that practical, but that exist. The
Right.
words, the meaning between the words, I can intuit into this. So how do I utilize that to then convey something that is more grounded and rooted, that does sort of bring it back into the real world, tangible reality? Capricorn can learn to convey things from a more vulnerable emotional place, instead of being so reserved sometimes and serious.
Yeah.
So
That's a great example. Thank you for, I think that example was really important, so that people can really understand, including myself, what you mean about the opposites in communication and how to also work together based on those nuances. Because I'm sure everybody can relate here to that.
mhm.
And being in communication, I can very much relate. I don't know what my Mercury is in yet, but being a Pisces sun sign, I could very much relate to what you're saying from the Piscean realm.
Right, right. And I think it's too like just while we're on this particular example, where there might be Pisces is not boundaried, so there's like sort of a merging that can happen. And so it can be also important to like, oh, I need to put boundary. I need to actually boundary, like, are these my thoughts, or are these somebody else's thoughts? Are these, that type of thing can start to happen. So it's just a way, with communication. And if we're trying to elevate, enhance, and support the communication, we need to really have like as much awareness around it as possible. Are we going to be aware all the time? Nope. But as we start to learn and discover this, and there's like grace there's a level of grace. And then when you start to understand yourself and your partner, again, it's like a level of grace, like, oh, maybe I don't need to feel, I don't need to take it personally when they're really super short and concise. That's just the way that they tend to communicate. It's not that there's not love, you know, behind that. Similarly, not get frustrated when your partner's kind of like, they sound to you like they're speaking in circles. You can just like ask for more clarity, like what is what's the essence of this? And maybe depending on where their Mercury is, you need to ask them how they feel about it, how it feels for them. And that is what elicits more detail or practicality.
That's a really, really good point. Is some based on their Mercury is some are going to need, how do you feel about this? Or how do you think about this? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh, such good stuff, Anna. Thank you. Thank you. Any last words that you would like to add in there? Such profound, it's such a profound explanation of, as I'm thinking what you're sharing and how it very much ties into the work that I do, but from a totally different angle, which is
Right,
so
right.
fascinating. And it's such a great way to be able to perspective shift and see things and our relationships and how we can tackle certain elements of our relationship through different angles. And I think at the end of the day, they're both working towards having more compassion for
Yep,
ourselves and for others.
yep, for sure. Yeah, I'll just say one more thing, which is I often like to look at Mercury as manifestation, as I said. Thoughts are words they create. But then in a couple situation, like what do you guys want to create? And what's cool is you can like kind of look at your separate Mercuries, the placements of them. And sometimes I'll do this and I'll be like, okay, well, this is this is a way for you to manifest inside, like whatever it is that you want to manifest inside of your relationship, to kind of utilize your mercurial placements for that. So anyway.
Great. That's wonderful. Thank you, Anna. Thank you. So let's take the communication, we'll flip it on its head, and we'll look at it now from more of a relational standpoint. Even though astrology is an insight into how to be more relational, right? As humans through our different astrological charts. And so what the research shows currently is that 55% of our interactive communication exists in our body language. 38% is through our voice quality, and 7% is our actual words. So that really surprised me. Not that I wasn't aware that our body languages read much quicker to our brain than our actual words, but our tone does too. And so that means 93% of our communication really lies on how we say things and not so much what we say. And that's going to be led from our tone and also our physicality, our body language. And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of times my clients will say, well, you know, this is just the way I speak. Like, I don't want to have to adjust it for my partner. This is how I speak. However, if your partner is starting to shut down because the tone in your voice is threatening to him or her on a biological level, it's not going to make your communication very easy for you, especially because they're going to become defensive. So the number one in communication, I'm going to go through 4 communication styles, but in that regard, I would say ineffective communication styles. We all use them to some degree, but they're highly ineffective when it comes to having really good communication. So the number one predictor of divorce within the first 6 years of marriage is contempt. So there's also research showing that it actually, harboring contempt actually makes us ill, and it also creates a lot of often sickness, maybe repeatedly getting sick. So it means that in order for us to address contempt is to stop using contempt in your relationship, because your relationship will start to get better. But that's the number one indicator and predictor of divorce within the first 6 years. And that's how the Gottman Institute was able to start to be able to predict who would stay together and who would get divorced. And some of
Danielle,
the
when you, like, how would you describe contempt as like happening inside of the relationship? Like, I understand it as a concept. I'm just curious.
That's so good. Thank you for the question. And I was actually going to explain it later, but I'm glad you're addressing it now. So contempt is this. It's taking a stance of superiority and your partner, making your partner feel worthless. It's name calling. It's scoffing, yes. So that's contempt. So if you start to see, now I catch myself because I have a tendency to do the eye roll, and I have to literally catch myself and be like, Danielle, those are signs of contempt that you're showing somebody. That is not nice. Just like, what's going on here? So yeah, thanks for the question. So warring couples will we're more likely as a species to be warring than loving. So there's a need for us on a biological level to connect and also to protect. So warring couples will use contempt and criticism, while loving couples, and I will say skilled couples, will start to use compassion and empathy and understanding, protection and curiosity with each other. Very different. So I call those the tools of rising in love, is being able to use compassion, learning how to understand before being understood, being able to protect each other in private and public. That means humiliation or embarrassment, right? And getting curious when we think we have the answers of who we think our partner is. Most likely we have some idea, but often our partners may not even know, him or herself. So there's 4 types of communication styles that I mentioned, and the Gottman Institute calls them the 4 horsemen. So it's defensiveness, it's contempt, it is criticism, and it's stonewalling. I'm going to go through each of them really quickly here to explain that. So defensiveness is like the kryptonite to connection, right? And it's a communication style that a lot of us use. And often it's an unsuccessful strategy because all that we're met with is defensiveness, right? And often our partner is just feeling criticized, and that is why he or she would start to become defensive. So when we're being defensive, we use excuses and we play more of the innocent victim in response to feeling unjustly accused or criticized. So we want, and sometimes we also start to reverse blame when we are feeling accused. I mean, have you done that, Anna, or experienced that in your own relationships where you're feeling defensive and you might want to, not maybe now as much, but in the past where you want to, you'd flip it around and blame them
Right.
for something else?
Sure. Yeah. It's like just kind of deflecting that energy and like, oh, now I'm going to send it back or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can relate to it until I realized that it's highly
Mhm.
ineffective.
Mhm.
And it's normal to feel defensive when we are feeling threatened, but it's also continues to escalate conflict. So I'm going to give you 7 examples of defensiveness. I found these were really interesting. It's a couples therapist, Elizabeth Earnshaw, and she gave really beautiful examples of things that people, I don't, even myself, didn't think of all these examples of defensiveness. So it's over explaining, and I'm going to give example. Well, I would have clean the dishes, but when I went to clean them, there was no dish detergent, and then I went to the store, and then the car wasn't working, and so it's this over explaining is an element of a defensive response. And then it's also making yourself a victim. So you're always so mean to me, like you're doing something to me, and you're always so mean to me. It's returning the blame, which Anna and I just spoke about, to your partner. I only did that because you did X, right? Whatever that X is. I only did that because you fill in the blank. Counter criticizing, which is I'll start doing the dishes when you start taking care of the lawn better. You're always ignoring that. So criticizing the person back when you've been criticized, right? And then dismissing, you're kidding, right? It's not a very big deal. So dismissing that what your partner feels is important. And then redirecting the conversation. This will also happen, this redirect, if couples tend to be conflict avoidant. So they avoid conflict is, we can't talk about this right now because I want to talk about something else that's more comfortable for me to talk about.
Mhm.
Right? So that can be a defensive mechanism.
Well, and it's very much like all of these just ultimately come down to not taking personal responsibility.
It's true. It's true. And not taking personal responsibility of our part in the conversation, or being able to also communicate to a partner, ouch, that hurt. I'm feeling defensive.
Mhm.
I'm feeling defensive right now because I'm feeling criticized. Notice
Mhm.
I never used you. It was all about me. So a lot of times couples don't know how to do that because they get caught up in the trigger and then they go with it and then they're down the rabbit hole, right? So really good point, Anna. All right, so let's go on to criticism. And as we all know, feeling criticized doesn't feel good. And we want to learn how to really take criticism when we have difficult conversations and complaints and really lead from a place of openness and curiosity, because it's human nature to state what we don't want before what we do want. However, this is very difficult when it comes to conversations with our partners. So think about it this way. What if every time you went to the gym and you harshly criticized your body for the way it looked, the way it felt, that you weren't doing enough, you'd probably walk away feeling really down. I mean, how I remember when, I was training to dance professionally and I was so judgmental and critical of my body, and it didn't make me
Mhm.
better. Didn't
No,
enhance.
absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, you and I have that similar past of training professionally as
Oh,
dancers.
oh
Yeah.
my God, that's right. Yeah. So exactly. It just feels as though, you can't win. And when you feel you can't win, we want to set our partners up so that they can win. And criticizing our partner is not a way. It's only going to bring about defensiveness and self-protection. So if you're like, why can't you be vulnerable with me, but you're criticizing him or her, it's near to impossible, because the person's going to want it, unless they're highly skilled and they're saying, I am feeling really criticized right now. I'm feeling that I'm getting really triggered. And I was just wondering if we could talk about this. So that's going to take some skill to be able to not be pulled in by the criticism. And then there's stonewalling, which is one of the poorest communication styles that really does kill a relationship. And that's pretty much the silent treatment, ignoring your partner, turning away, acting like you're busy, or feeling like you're engaged in obsessive behaviors like the phone, right? It's often a coping mechanism, stonewalling, when we become emotionally flooded and we don't know how to say to our partner, stop word, like I just used with Anna, ouch, I'm just feeling emotionally flooded right now. I need to take a step back. Instead, we stonewall, we ignore, and we turn away, or we act like we're busy, because literally we've gone into what I call the red zone, where it's too much for our nervous systems. And then we're going to talk about here, have you ever stonewalled? Do you ever feel like you've stonewalled in your relationships? Or
Yeah, it's funny. I was just kind of like thinking about that. I know I get overwhelmed pretty easily.
you're probably a highly
Um,
sensitive person, I would imagine.
yeah. Yeah, so I can get that like I'm I'm in overwhelm. I cannot receive anymore. I cannot, So I don't know. Like I'm like I know there's a difference between stonewalling. I feel like stonewalling is more of an intentional avoidance as opposed to maybe the overwhelm. I don't know. I mean, that's a nuance.
It's nuanced, because a lot of it's like when people act out those behaviors. I know I've done stonewalling. You're not consciously thinking I'm going to shut this person out necessarily.
Yeah,
You're just like, I can't handle anymore, and I'm going to shut down and close myself off to the threat,
right.
because you're psychologically just flooded. And so it's a coping mechanism to protect ourselves. So you're right. It could be conscious and subconscious, depending on how much you're aware of your behavior. But often if it's conscious, then, and you have choices to make, then you can redirect. And that's where I keep saying skilled communicators can say, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so flooded right now. Can we slow this down? Right?
Mhm,
Where
mhm.
it would be unconscious if you didn't realize that and you just did the behavior, that coping mechanism.
Right, right.
And then we're going to look at contempt, what I had just done. That's name calling, that's eye rolling, that's ridicule and mockery, and like sarcasm, like mocking with sarcasm towards our partners, and just being outright mean. Contempt is really just being mean. And it attempts, and I'm not saying consciously, but it attempts to make our partner to feel worthless. And it makes us in a position of superiority. Like, I mean, what does that make you feel like when I do that, right, Anna? It's like, if I did that to Anna while she was presenting, she probably would feel what, Anna, if I just was
I
like,
would feel diminished. I would just be like, oh, like,
yeah, yeah. And we do this to, you know, I can talk for myself. I have done this before to my partners in the past, before I learned to become more skilled as a partner, and as a communicator. And I'm not here to shame anybody. I mean, these are all communication styles that we've been handed down or learned. So let's go ahead and switch this up before we wrap up and talk about 3 communication hacks that can turn these conversations, that could move in the disconnection towards disconnection to connection. So how do we address, these are, so I'm going to go through the 3. The 3 is speaking in I statements. What I have been demonstrating with Anna is being able to reflect your feelings, your perceptions, your beliefs and experiences without using you. So the moment you use a you statement, is it makes your partner feel as there's something wrong with him and her, with him or her, that their way they are thinking or their beliefs or whatever, their opinions, are wrong. So if I was like, you make me feel, versus I feel when you turn away from me, that I feel alone in our relationship. Or I could reword it as like, I feel alone in our relationship when you turn away from me when I'm talking to you mid-sentence. So you're not blaming him or her, you're taking responsibility of how you're feeling in that moment without having to start to blame your partner or criticize him. Okay. And when we use I statements, it really does require us to start to become more vulnerable. You're taking, as Anna said earlier, you're taking responsibility for your side of the street. You're cleaning up your side of the street. And you're
Which I feel like too, you know, I just kind of want to jump in for a second and say, and trust me, I say this and it's still something that I like have to like learn and digest and all of that in my own way. But that vulnerability, often when it is authentic vulnerability, even though it scares the behoovies out of us to like really do that, right? Like I think probably safely say that most people, it's a scary thing to be really vulnerable, and to feel really vulnerable, but often it's such a point of connection, and I would even say attraction.
yes, because there is intimacy with that. As
Yeah.
long as the environment is safe. And I say that it has to be safe. We cannot,
100%.
when my couples are in threat and they're constantly threatening each other through these type of communication styles, it's really hard to become vulnerable unless somebody is going to take the lead of, I'm going to do this differently. I want to show up differently. I want to be a better communicator. I don't want to put my partner on the defense. I really actually want to be able to get my needs met and help him or her get his needs or her needs met. Yeah, really good point, Anna. So I feel like a great example of an I statement is, I'm going to give this example. Please slow down. You're driving so please slow down. You're driving so fast that I feel unsafe. Versus a you statement is, you're driving like a crazy person. Slow down. Right? So you're taking responsibility in the first statement of please slow down because I'm not feeling safe, basically, versus you're driving like a crazy person, slow down. You're blaming and criticizing your partner versus really becoming more vulnerable and sharing that it's the way he or she is behaving is making you feel afraid. That's a vulnerable point, as we were just talking about. I'm not going to get too much into this one because we've talked about it in the past. Well, some of us have who've been here, but leading with curiosity versus judgment. And that we want to really, again, we are biologically designed for war more than love. So it's easy for us to automatically fight versus being more loving in conflict. We're biologically designed to be like that. So it's easier for us to protect versus connect. So these are tools to really listen with curiosity is counterintuitive to our natural way of being. It's also familiar, but familiar doesn't mean that familiar doesn't mean that it's actually the way in which we want to grow. It just means it's familiar to what we know. So jumping to judgment and criticism and seeking to be understood are all very familiar because it's protected. It's protection, or what we think is protecting us. So really, there is no matter how much trust or intimacy there is in a relationship, it's nearly impossible for someone to listen to a personal attack without being defensive. So if that's the tactic that you're taking, and this is even true for happily married couples. So just be aware of that. Start becoming, as Anna is bringing more awareness around astrology and the influences on your astrological chart, becoming more conscious of how you're actually talking to your partner and how you want to also be talked to. Because here's the thing. The Gottman research also had discovered that partners cannot negotiate or solve problems until each partner says, yes, you understand me, you get how I'm feeling. Then once you have that, you can start to problem solve. But people always want to problem solve. Like if we resolve the issue, that will be the better thing. And then we can go ahead and then you can understand me. It's actually flipped on its head. We have to understand and feel gotten before we problem solve or think we're going to fix something. And then lastly is, I like this technique. It's called I'm noticing and I'm wondering. So it's a way to be curious. And what this helps us do is, for instance, I'll say it to Anna, I'm noticing that we're hypothetically playing here, that you seem sad when you mentioned that, when I mentioned that I couldn't go, to the hot springs with you on your birthday. And I'm just wondering if that's true for you. So it's actually just putting it out there. So it gives your friend or your partner an opportunity to not feel judged or criticized, but that you're actually curious as to what they're thinking in their worldview. So I'm noticing and I'm wondering. I love that one. I'm noticing, that you seem sad when I said I couldn't go to the doctors with you. And I'm just wondering if that's true for you. And then let them explain. And you don't have to take anything personally that they're saying that has anything to do with you. You're just going to stay quiet and hear their worldview.
Or even make any assumptions, because maybe they weren't sad about that. And that's where.
Yeah, absolutely. And they could say, oh, no, I wasn't sad. Actually, at the moment when you saw my facial expression, I was thinking about my grandmother or my grandfather. And I remembered this really touching time, and it really touched me, whatever. Right. But it would at least give them an opportunity to share what is true for them. All right. That's it for today. That is a lot of communication and astrology. I think that's a wrap. What do you say, Anna?
I definitely would say, yeah, that's a wrap.
It's been so fun, Anna. Thanks for being here. It's so much fun. Oh, next week. What are we talking about next week?
Well, we are not talking next week because.
Oh, right. It's my birthday. Yes, absolutely. So we're going to meet February 29th. The following week, we're taking a week off. And what are we talking about then?
We are going to be talking about more of kind of the attraction and the chemistry, and the romance.
I love it. It sounds spicy. All right, so we're moving on from communication. But good communication leads to a lot of sexy time and romance and further intimacy. So stay tuned. Thank you so much, Anna. This was great.
Thank you. And thank you everyone who is watching and will be watching. And we'll see you next time. And if you missed one, go back. You can watch the other ones. They are posted. So.
They are posted. They're posted on my page and on Anna's page. So
Yeah, I'm posting them there. So yeah.
perfect. All right. See you later, guys.
All
Thanks.
right. Bye.